It would be great to hear, we have a mic runner, it would be great to hear your stories, your challenges, your questions, your insights. I mean, I certainly don't know everything. I'm happy to learn from you as well. But yeah, anything's fair game. This is a dialogue. It's not a many-to-many dialogue. It's kind of a weak dialogue, but we'll do what we can.
Hello. Sorry. Oops. Yeah, I had this kind of generosity conundrum. I decided to do this swimathon for charity, and what I've ended up doing is spending like a couple of £100 on the swim. And then I was thinking, what's the point? I should just give that to the charity. It's probably going to be more money than I'm actually going to raise. And I've been like, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And are you going to leave me with that question?
Yeah. Like, is it, is that silly?
Think of it this way. Whoever the anonymous donor was that chose to give everybody £1 could have just taken the £200 and given it to a charity to do XYZ work. But why all this labor? Why all this work? You know, and what do we get? You know, where is the impact?
Yeah.
But you see, the impact is usually a one-dimensional. It's a one-dimensional view of how change happens. There is impact. There is suffering. There are people that need our support and help, and we ourselves need support and help many times. But there's also inner transformation. So you have to juxtapose and remember what happens when you labor through this. What happens when my mom cooks a meal every single Wednesday for 15 years for 30,000 people and says thank you for an opportunity of service? What is happening with that? What is the impact? She's not even going to be alive to see the impact of those small acts and seeing what change it has created in the world. Her greatest reward is doing that action here and now. And what that creates is an inner transformation. What it also creates is connections with other people, because now you're no longer saying me, me, me. You're saying this other person is me. It's like my left hand and right hand. I don't count when I give from left to right because it's all part of me. Right? So you expand the we. And then when she goes to work and she's got a full-time job, she's in that same mindset. Right? So she's thinking we. She's not thinking, oh, this person is my competitor and I need to beat them. You know, she's generous to them. And when she's generous, it creates connection there. And maybe it creates synergistic possibilities. And maybe she's able to then, it can ripple out in all kinds of directions. So we have to remember that there is space and need and good reason to honor impact in the world, immediate impact. But we can't forget about the inner transformation. And if you ask me to look at and to weigh both of those, I would say, initially, maybe I would have said 50-50. You got to honor the inner transformation and the outer. But now I would say it's more like, maybe 5 and 95. The inner power of inner transformation is just so incredibly stronger than the immediate impact. And we see this with aid all the time. How many trillions of dollars have been pumped into Africa over the last so many decades? And what do we see? It's worse off in practically every measurable metric. So we know that the way we do impact is not really working. And there are so many examples of that. But perhaps when we add the inner transformation element to it, to the degree that, it doesn't have to be 95. It could be 95 for me, it could be 50 for you, could even be 10. But let's explore that and let's keep that in mind. And that changes the dynamic. So keep doing your fundraisers.
Keep going. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Yeah, there's a couple there. I'm blinded by light, so I'm just seeing heads everywhere.
Well, thank you so much for this wonderful talk. And for many, many years, I've noticed that there is a wonderful energy in the universe. And everything you said tonight is the energy of the universe, because you can be generous in the smallest way. Sometimes there's somebody passing you on the street and they're looking down, and just smiling is an act of generosity that can change their day. Yeah. When somebody says, give me money, you say, well, perhaps not money, come for a coffee. But the universe always gives back. always gives back to you. You can do something here for someone with no thought or need for thanks. And yet somebody you love might be in a situation, another part of the world, and there is someone who's giving to them. Just like you and your wife on your journey. And this is completely, absolutely a belief that everyone can have in the universe.
Thank you. Thank you. There you go.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was really enlightening and really inspiring. To pick up on something you said just now about aid in Africa, there's been a huge positive impact.
There's been a huge what?
Been a huge positive impact from the aid and trillions of dollars given. And when you look at it per person, we've given $20 per person per year, and the average life expectancy has gone up by 10 years. I just wanted to pick up that because that was a little mistake. And also, I was just going to ask a question about, sometimes we have to decide on the different ways that we can help. You might do some acts of kindness and you might do others. You might choose to help one friend, you might choose to help another. You might choose to give to one charity, you might choose to help another. And I've had different responses to the idea of choosing how to help. And some people say, it doesn't matter where you give, as long as you're giving, that's the important thing. Other people say, well, if you can save one person's life, you can save 5 people's lives for just giving to different charities, and that's an important thing. And I wondered what you would have to say about how we choose the best ways to help others.
Yeah. Sorry. I won't respond to your first question, first comment. How do you decide where to give? So if, let's say, you had 200 pounds, would you give to somebody struggling for food, shelter, clothing, or would you say, I want to illuminate, a little tiny extra spark in somebody, and so that when they give in that way, so it's 200 people doing a small act of kindness, or one entity doing one focused, efficient act of kindness. What is greater? And I don't know if it's a either or. I think it's a yes and. So we need both. And where are we called in a particular moment? Mark himself was telling me a story. Last night we had a beautiful circle where my wife was sharing stories from her pilgrimage on Camino de Santiago. And we left the circle, and he was on the tube, and he met this woman, and the woman said he wanted 50 cents, and he ends up engaging with her in a dialogue, and at the end just leaves her with 20 pounds. And do you say, there have been so many economists and scientists and thinkers that have been asked the question, what happens when you encounter an immediate need? Do you walk away? Do you stay with it? How deep do you interact? What is the most effective and efficient use of it? Do you go 1 degree of separation, or do you think about 6 degrees of separation? And really, I don't think there's a science to it. I don't think there's one predictive, prescriptive response to it. I think it's about where you are in your life and how you respond to that. I think it's all fair game, but I think we have to know the delineation between external impact and inner transformation. And most of us are just so conditioned to be external, because that's the consumeristic paradigm. It's all external. We are incomplete until we consume these material products. And we're all raised that way. In the US, I think an average person sees 3,000 ads per day. And each of these ads is telling you, you are incomplete as you are. You need to buy my makeup, you need to buy my products, and so we start thinking that we're incomplete as we are, and we need stuff on the outside. And as a result, we start to not honor the inner transformation. And so the invitation is really to say, maybe there's something on the inside, and explore it for your own. My response to it 5 years ago would have been different, 10 years ago would have been different. When I was 15, it would have been even more different. I initially started, who wants to see people suffer, So there's this incredible thing of, trying to solve suffering in the world. But Karma Kitchen is doing that in a very indirect way. And so do you say, do I do indirect reciprocity? Do I do direct? Do I do aid? Am I spontaneous? Am I more strategic? Do I even know how to be strategic? Do I have enough data points to be strategic? So there's a lot of these questions. I can't say I have an answer, but I would just say that we have to honor the full spectrum. And we have to really push ourselves to go into parts of the spectrum where we may not be comfortable. Where inner transformation is not as simple as black and white. This guy's hungry, he needs food. Very simple. Inner transformation is not as simple. And so sometimes because of that, we tend to shy away from it. But I think we just need to look at the whole spectrum. It's not really the answer, but...
Hello. I just want to just comment on what your colleague commented on about the intergenerational kind of paying it forward, if you like. I was raised in a household with a mother who was a working single parent, and that we were brought up, you had to give. It was part of your DNA. At Christmas she worked with the elderly, and every Christmas and every Easter and every New Year we had different elderly people around our dinner table who we didn't know, and we'd always wonder why were these strangers there? Who have you brought home now, Mum? And that was my mother's life, and she did it it wasn't part of her job role, but for her, she couldn't leave without any family, basically. What I will say is that when my mother died, and I'm still choked when I talk about it now, it was 12 years ago, the generosity of strangers, that showed me my mother's life. And I was so grateful, because that spoke more volumes than anything could have spoke. People, I just can't, and even today, I still choke up at the thought of people that I didn't know, people who I knew were like friends or work colleagues, the practice, our GP practice, the generosity of many strangers at my mother's passing is something that I'll always hold on to. And because of that, I always try. She did raise us, she said, you must always do good. And you never do good to receive. You just do, and you keep on walking, basically. And I know that because of what my mother's done, I try and do little things. I know that I've been touched. I know my son has been touched. And that's the generational link. If you do good, you don't do it for yourself, but somewhere, when you're out or someone else you know, they will be touched. And that's a lesson, I think, that we should all hold on to and remember. The universe will always look out for you.
Your mother was very, very wise.
Hi, I just wanted to share an experience 2 days ago. Anyone who's been driving around anywhere near London this weekend probably been in as many traffic jams as I have. And on Saturday I joined a huge jam approaching the M25 and was in a hurry to get home and desperate to get home and pulled up and was fuming. And there's a huge queue of traffic ahead of me. And suddenly I caught a glimpse of a guy walking on the opposite pavement with 2 carrier bags, as I thought, on the ground in front of him, and he was just stood looking at them. And what I rapidly realised was that both carrier bags had broken, and he was looking at them hopelessly as if to say, how on earth am I getting this home? And this traffic jam full of people champing at the bit, waiting to get home, suddenly a woman appeared, went to her boot and got out a long life shopping bag and ran across the road and gave it to him. And then obviously what then happened was that the cars behind were keeping an eye, all of us were keeping an eye on him to see if he could fit all of that shopping into that carrier bag. So then another guy went to his boot and got another bag because it wasn't enough. But what those 2 direct acts of kindness did was that everybody in that queue of traffic that witnessed that, I was smiling, I've got photos on my phone of this whole thing going on, and it just spread. And it will spread even further because never again will we sit in a traffic jam and watch someone go through that again without doing something. Yeah. But it will pass its way on and come back.
Absolutely. So. And our current systems are just not designed to optimize that kind of long-term systemic change. If you notice what happened after the tsunami in Japan, there were some really remarkable acts of kindness, but there was one which was totally in your face to the rest of the world. $70 million were returned back to the government. I found money. It's not mine. I want to return it back. And that is not the work of an organization, that is not the work of a government, that is cultural change. That is where you have to thank the ancestors who decided to stop and help that random stranger, which then created a whole ripple in the ancestor's home, in the community, and it started to ripple out from one to another to a third. And we notice it when we say $70 million was returned. Most of the times, anywhere in the world, you have looting. Everyone says, oh, this is my time to go and grab. In Japan, that is not what happened. And even for things like, let alone material things, there's just straight cash. It's not my cash. I'm going to return it. So many people did that. And I think that's long-term systemic change. And we have to honor that along with the short-term. We have a bunch. Oh, sure.
People talk about London taxi drivers being probably the most miserable and the most grasping. I'm going to try not to cry, but I'm going to share a story. I lost my mum in February and decided to get fit and to run the Great North Run for charity for her. And I was sharing my story with a taxi driver stuck in traffic. And when I got home and went to pay him, he said, no, the taxi's free. Put that into your charity box.
Wow.
London taxi driver.
It's a double wow.
Hi. What's the difference between being a doormat and a very kind person?
It's a good question. I think when you experience the interconnect, as you start giving, you may initially be a doormat. Let's take an example of a person who may be a doormat. You may initially be a doormat, but as you're giving purely, you experience a kind of, well, I guess thank you, it's all good. You experience a kind of inner transformation, but there's a stillness. With any act of kindness, there's a stillness of the mind. And when the mind is still, it's more interconnected with other people. And when it's more interconnected with other people, you feel not only their joys, but also the suffering of others. There are tribes in Africa where if one person in the community has a nightmare, nothing happened in real life, it was just a nightmare, but they all come and say, what have we done wrong? Right? How can we stop this when it's off by an inch so it doesn't blow up later? So honoring, you start to realize that your suffering, your joy is my joy, your suffering is my suffering. And so when you are adored, for people who are extreme givers, but perhaps may not have honored the inner transformation element of it, if they start honoring the inner transformation, they realize that people are going to be good and they're going to be bad. We were talking about this yesterday, that just as there is a positive ripple effect, you do a small act and there's a positive ripple effect, and I'm not going to reap the fruits of the trees that have grown from all those seeds. And that's beautiful, I let that go. On the other hand, you may also receive negative fruits for seeds that were planted long time ago. And that is just as much a part of the service journey as it is to put this joy and love out into the world, is to have the equanimity to actually endure the negative seeds that someone may have planted long time back that has rippled into some negative action whose fruits you are now receiving. And you honor that and you say, I'm going to hold my heart with stillness, with the same stillness that I hold my heart when I'm putting positive seeds out. And in fact, I want to rebound this back with even greater love and greater compassion so that we put an end to that negative ripple and we put more positive ripples out into the world. That's tough. I learned that personally on the pilgrimage, when we were walking across India, and you get a lot of amazing acts of kindness, like the cab driver, like the moms who would just, sometimes they have to walk for 4 hours. I mean, it's not even an exaggeration, to get water. And we were thirsty, and they would give us this water, just because they're generous. But on the other hand, there were people not so generous. There were people not so kind. There were people who were super skeptical. There were people giving us all kinds of negativities. And we looked at that, we received that, and we say, what can I do? to be skillful in this circumstance and rebound it back with compassion. So I think if you just are looking at one end of the spectrum, you could be experiencing the doormat syndrome. But I think as you start to experience all of this, it gives you a kind of gusto, and the receiver also knows that, wow, this person is centered, they're rock solid, and they're being generous. Right? That is different from, oh, I'm just walking all over them because this guy hasn't caught up with the program, so I'm just going to go and walk all over him. It's very different. The person realizes, and we see that even at Karma Kitchen, where some people will come and you say, wow, he's just taking advantage of the context of kindness. But you explain it to them, and as they understand and as they see that place that you're in, and they don't see a judgment, it changes their perspective. And so I think that's all a result of doing small acts, experiencing a stillness, connecting with the interconnection, having stillness to connect with the negative as well as the positive, and holding yourself in that center. I think that reduces the doormat effect. It's kind of a long answer.
Sometimes I do kind things, occasionally, but feel like it's much more that I think I'd feel guilty if I didn't do it, as opposed to I know I feel good because I do it. Is there a difference between those two things? And if I'm still doing kind things, does it matter?
I think we do what we can. I think guilt doesn't really factor into, certainly not my inner ecology. I think we have, every moment is an opportunity, and every moment you have, that you're able to see the good, that you're able to see, prompt an inner compassion, I think is a positive thing. So I wouldn't look at it as like maximizing that. I think that's the disease of like, I want to do the maximum amount of kindness, I want to do the most amount of impact in the world. And this is about like honoring the small and saying, okay, look, I'll do what I can. Being humble, being rooted in like the ordinary. So many times, so many people I'll invite to the Wednesday meditations at our place, and I'll tell them it's the most ordinary thing you've ever seen. There's no center, there's no speaker, it's everybody just holding circle. And yet you feel elevated by the end. And what was that? That was the collective, everyone doing their little bit. Some people may give more, some people may give less, some people give by speaking, some people give by listening. And we hold space for all of that, and it's ordinary. So I think this not thinking in terms of maximizing and, really like having that like, oh, the more the merrier kind of mindset, but really just like sinking into the small and doing what you can, I think changes. And you'd be surprised at the ripple effect, as we've seen in service space again and again.
There's somebody at the back.
Sure. I can't see it back, so I'm biased to the front.
Hi, I'm a bit nervous. I was wanting to answer the lady at the front who was saying she was worried about her generosity being taken advantage of. Yeah. I personally don't think it can be, because our natural state of being is loving and giving. It's yoga, it's Buddha. That's our natural state. And when you practice giving, you actually are empowering yourself to be the person that you used to be, the person that you were when you were fearless. And giving actually, not only does it empower you, it empowers those around you to do the same. And if somebody is going to take advantage of your beautiful gift, then what they are doing is making a cause for their future, which is going to come back and bite them on the arse. Sorry, boss it. So I don't think you need to worry that your kindness is going to be taken advantage of, because everybody's on their own journey, and if somebody is going to take advantage of a beautiful act of generosity, they'll get a little slap for that at some point, and maybe a karmic slap. Meanwhile, your generosity will empower you to really be the person that you know that you can be. The end.
Bravo. You shouldn't have been nervous at all. I say we give her applause. There you are, yeah. We'll go one last comment, and I think I'll end and then give it to Mark. Is that good?
Hi. I just had a little lovely thing that happened that I wanted to share. So I was at Cafe Gratitude in San Francisco, which you probably know of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was very, very moving. It's where every dish has a title which is like an affirmation. So it's I am love or I am peace. So I had my beautiful dish of quinoa and found that I bit on something very hard, and I was like, oh my God, I've got glass in my bowl. And so I sort of took it out, and it did look indeed like a piece of glass. And my friend was with me, and she said, you should tell them. And so they came up, and I said, you know, I'm not fast, but I found this in my food. It's like a little piece of glass or something. And she took it from my hand, it had come from my mouth, and said, oh my God, I'm so sorry, let me check. So she went off, and she came back, and she said, yes, it was a crystal. I'm so sorry. Is there anything we can do? And I had that very sort of corporate thought. I'm not corporate, but I did have that thought of, oh, I could get a free dessert for me and my friend. And then I was like, oh, I'm in Cafe Gratitude, you can't do that. So I was like, I said, well, you know, no. And I said, in fact, you know what, maybe like a poem. And she said, what? And I said, well, you could write me a poem or something, I don't know. And she said, okay. And I said, well, you know, no hassle, don't worry. So she's like, oh, no, okay. So she went off and came back about 5 minutes later with the chef. Yeah. And they had written me haikus. And they stood there beaming and read the haikus on this crystal to me. And I was like, wow, that's what it's all. I was so moved, they were so moved. It was this amazing thing. Me and my friend were just like tears in our eyes. I took a photo of them and just was like the spread of happiness through that little moment of me not asking for something back for myself, but just asking for this thing. Yeah. So,
that's such a great story. Thank you, thank you. And I think that's it. You know, if all of us can take those small moments where free dessert or a haiku, if we all go for the haikus and all those kind acts get connected, you'd be amazed at how far these revolutions can go. Just one stat to leave you with, actually research. So imagine you had a group of, we have a lot more than 55 people or so. Let's say you had a group of 55 folks. Bring in this giant piece of paper, and you ask everyone, all you have to do is fold this piece of paper in half and pass it to the person next to you. What first person does it, second, third, fourth. And then the researchers went and asked this question in a different way, but a similar question, and said, how thick do you think that stack of paper will be at the end? So a bunch of people said, it could be pretty big, like a phone book size. In the US we have phone books this thick, and so, yeah. Someone said, no, that's much bigger than that. It's like the size of a refrigerator. Someone who thought really big said, no, actually, it's the size of a mountain. I mean, you know, you got 55 people. Everyone is, you know, folding it in half, and it can kind of add up, you know. And the real answer, turns out, for those mathematically oriented, you know that it's greater than the distance from here to the moon. Just 52 people. Everyone just folding it in half. And that's the power. It's 2 to the 52nd, actually. And of course, I've said this to kids, and you know, kids, there are those smarty pants, smart Alex, and you can't fold a piece of paper more than 7 times. You know that. It's a law of physics. You really can't, right? But it's a thought experiment where if we all did that, then you would be greater than the distance from here to the moon. But we don't think in that exponential way. We think linearly. And what if we pause that? We all get connected in this invisible hug, in this invisible circle, and we do these acts, and we spread them out into the world like your mom suggested. The world would be a much better place. So thank you all for sharing and listening. And I'm around. And thank you to this guy. There you are, Action for Happiness, for putting these on. And we're around for hugs, so I'll be around.
Thank you so much, Nipun. That was wonderful. And just to end with 2 really quick sort of requests, really. One is, we do often after these events go for a drink. We'd love it if you wanted to come and join, carry on the conversation. We'll be here for a little bit, but we go to a pub called the Enterprise just on Red Lion Street. Come out of the building, take a left. If you want to carry on connecting, talking, then do join us there for a drink. But secondly, obviously Nipun has done this little thought experiment with the pounds. We've all got a pound and a smart card. We'd love to, I mean, you know, some of you will go and do wonderful things with that, others may not, but we'd love it if you could just kind of, you know, keep the chain going by letting us know. We have a hashtag, Action for Happiness, a kind of Twitter account on Action for Happiness. If you kind of tweet about it, or if you want to email us and tell us, we'll create a page and capture some of the stories. What comes out of tonight in terms of little ripples? What have you done? What have you been inspired to do, having heard Nipun speak? What have you done with your pound? What have you done with your smart card? You know, if you want to share that with us, we'd love to hear that. So thank you for being here, but please join me in thanking once again Nipun for a wonderful, inspiring talk. Thank you.